This coverage of the British Historic Rally Championship is brought to you by Autosessif.com, Skipton Ford, the Tuthill Porsche Challenge, Sherwood Engines, XS Racing and West Wales Rally Spares. The rally would take place over 2 days, with 3 stages on the Friday evening and a further 11 on the Saturday. And it was Desi Nutt and Geraldine McBride who would lead the crews away at the start of the event, the crew brimful of confidence after their dominant Ulster Rally victory. Nutt and McBride made a positive enough start, but weren't as quick here as Ricky Profit and Graham Wild. Profit was hoping to win this event to keep his overall championship hopes alive. Profit has continued to grow in confidence as the season has progressed, and it is shown in his driving, and he was 5 seconds quicker than Nutt on the first stage. Next along were Derek and Rasheen Boyd, the pair going at the consistent pace that they have found on these events in 2011. The evening's second and third stages were both held in the dark, and Profit was really flying, stretching his lead to over 30 seconds over Nutt and McBride. Tomorrow was another day though, as it always is, and as quick and smooth as Profit looked on the first few stages, it was Desi who was out of the starting blocks like a rabbit attached to Usain Bolt's running shoes. And at the early morning halt, Ricky already knew that he had a battle on his hands.
Yeah, we're enjoying it. We've got to push again now, but maybe I just backed off a little bit, but I've got to just keep pushing and hope that we can continue.
But sadly he didn't, as on the very next stage, the car suffered serious suspension damage and Profit and Wild were out of the rally. But then almost at the same time, this happened. And then Derek and Roisin Boyd went out as well, with distributor problems. This left Nutt and McBride in a fairly easy lead. Well, as the only registered runners still going, actually. But now came the difficult part. Go slowly enough not to go off, but not slowly enough that you actually lose the will to live. And as the day turned into night, despite a problem with their lights, it was Nutt and McBride who took their second victory of the year.
We have the lights on. Care Crest Sutton, square left at Bush, long opens, 20.
Lights are very bad.
Yep. Square right, cuts over mud, 60.
And at the end of it all, Desi was as pleased as punch. You had a good start in Mid-Wales, as we know, and then had that problem at the end. A couple of bad rallies, and bang, bang, you've won 2 on the trot.
Yeah, well, you know, you never win everything forever, and you never lose everything forever. So our fortunes changed in the last couple of events.
In Category 2, it was 2010 Flanders Historic Rally winners David Stokes and Guy Weaver who were favourites here again. But with the road conditions being variable after plenty of pre-event rain, they were determined just to stay on the road over the first evening stages and not to try too many heroics. As it was, their pace was still good enough to put them in second place behind Chris Brown and Liz Jordan, who were absolutely flying on this first stage. Onto the dark stages now, and although Stokes and Weaver were quickest on the first of them, Brown and Jordan were then fastest on the final stage of the evening to take a 1.5 second lead into the following day. So it was Chris Brown and Liz Jordan who were in the proud position of being the highest placed of the Dunlop Wonago MSA British Historic Rally Championship runners as day 2 began. And they set off with a not inconsiderable task of trying to keep David Stokes and Guy Weaver behind them. And off Stokes and Weaver went like a rocket, and on the very first stage of the day, the 2010 champions were immediately 12 seconds quicker than Brown and Jordan to take the lead. So starting stage 5, Chris Brown was really fired up. Perhaps a bit too fired up, in fact.
Oh, he's off. He's off.
And running just behind them on the road, of course, and therefore next on the scene were, you guessed it, Stokes and Weaver.
So it's got slowing 3 right and tight square left mud. Square left mud. Okay, over square right, don't cut. Over square right, don't cut. Yeah, okay.
It must be hard to concentrate at times like that, but you've got to love the way Guy Weaver keeps everything under control. Back at service, and with a generally undamaged car, a Chasen Brown told us what had happened.
Approached the K-left, flat in third. It didn't go round. We ended up in the Brussels sprouts. But 20 Belgians came to our rescue. We managed to lift the car and carry it out of the field and put it back on the road for me. So we've dropped about 20 minutes now, but we're still going. So we'll try and climb back up and get a few points for the championship now.
With his main category rival out of the way, Stokes could afford to take things a little bit easier. But allowing for the fact that you can never take anything for granted, even he was probably quite surprised to see another of his usual Category 2 challengers, Stefan Stoof, facing the wrong way on this corner on the Silverberg stage. And rather surprisingly, despite Stokes being in a heavier Mark 1 Escort on British Championship spec tyres, while Stoof was in a lighter Mark 2 Escort with slightly more power and on Belgium spec tyres, Stokes was able to keep the distance between him and Stoof until the end of the stage. And unfortunately for Brown and Jordan, despite them being able to get their car running again, they retired from the rally with what appeared to be a Brussels sprouts related overheating situation. And sadly, the question for the Chris Brown Builders car mechanics was, can you fix it? No, they couldn't. So into second place in Category 2 came Pete Smith and Russ Langthorne, who had found a bit more pace in the daylight, and they were one of the crews to get high marks from a group of very enthusiastic Belgian spectators. Although one of the local drivers was getting marks all the way up to 11. Behind them was Siddle and Williamson, this crew dominating C3 and keeping alive their chance of taking the class championship honours in 2011, just as Siddle had done in 2010. And then came Dick Slaughter, the ever spectacular driver himself, also in with a chance of taking the C3 class, but still struggling a bit on tarmac. Next up were Peter Edgerton and Andrew Bargery, who were having a great slap with Slaughter and Ayres, quicker by a few seconds on one stage and then slower by a few on the next, to be just a handful of seconds behind Slaughter at the halfway point of the rally. But at the front, Stokes and Weaver were just pushing on, showing why they were champions in 2010 and look increasingly likely to be champions again in 2011. And once again their task was made easier when Pete Smith and Russ Langthorne retired after taking a wrong test on the zoning spectator stage. Which all meant that Terry Cree and Richard Shawes took 5th overall in Category 2 and 3rd in Class C3. Peter Edgerton and Andrew Bargery were 4th and 2nd in Class C5. Dick Slaughter pushed all the way to 3rd and 2nd in C3, but was no match on this event for Andrew Siddle and Carl Williamson, who was 2nd in category and won C3, despite dropping 30 seconds to Slaughter and Ayres on the final slip of the stage. But the winners, and deservedly so, were David Stokes and Guy Weaver.
We haven't put a wheel wrong, we've had one half spin, and that was it. Other than that, we haven't had a problem all day.
It's difficult to know who would have been more surprised to see Phil and Mick Squires leading Category 3 after the first stage, me or them. After all, this was tarmac. But with a few of the top names absent, this gave the opportunity for yet another different Category 3 winner. As whatever happened here, because of the absentees, there would be a new winner. The 5th from the 6 events so far. Realistically, any one of 4 crews would take it. Obviously Phil and Mick were up there amongst the favourites, But so were Adrian Commode and Maurice Beckett in their Porsche 911, who demonstrated their pace by being second after the first stage. Nick Woodman and Tim Sayer in their Ford Escort, who started off steadily, but who you knew would increase their pace as the event went on. And bringing a welcome touch of variety to Category 3, there were Guy Anderson and Kim Baker in their brand new Sunbeam Lotus. Although to be honest, it sounded so bad when it came past our camera positions on the first stage, you had to think that it wouldn't even reach the end of it. Nevertheless, following a cautious first stage, Guy upped the pace. And after the first evening stages, he and Kim Baker had a handy 10-second lead going into the second day. So it was Guy Anderson and Kim Baker who led the cars away on Saturday's first stage, Passendale. The Sunbeam still sounding as awful as ever, but certainly not lacking in pace as the crew managed to extend their lead over the first two stages. After that, it was maybe not surprising to see Anderson make two mistakes in two stages, with spins firstly here on Silverberg, which cost him about 20 seconds, and then immediately afterwards on Rumbecker. And suddenly, rather than being at the front of the field, Anderson and Baker were in third place, 20 seconds off the lead, and with it all to do. And the main beneficiaries of Anderson's generosity were Woodman and Sayer. Woodman had been fastest on the day's first stage anyway, but now with the help of Anderson's self-imposed handicap and some hard aggressive driving, he had the Category 3 lead for the first time in the BHRC. And he was driving right on the limit.
Turn square left. Sorry. Well done. And right 2 continues for 80.
But tracking him hard with the Squires brothers. A mere second seemed to separate them on each of the stages. So at this moment, the overall battle seemed to be between these three crews, with Adrian Commode just behind them, and his day being spoilt by this small overshoot on the very first corner of the day. But Anderson knew what he had to do now, and with a time almost 20 seconds faster than any other Category 3 car on Passendale, and incredibly 20 seconds quicker than he'd been over it the first time, Anderson leapfrogged his way back to the front of the field, although after over an hour of rallying, the gap from first to third was less than 4 seconds. As for the Squires-Woodman battle, there was no let-up in their pace, although a spin here on the heat stage did cost Squires a bit of time. But they kept on pushing, and so did Woodman, with the pair often separated on stages by just a tenth of a second, and with a gap never more than a few seconds. And after 10 stages, just 0.3 of a second separated them. And don't you just love historic rallying? Here a Mini passes an Austin Healey Sprite, while the pair of them are just about to be chased down by Sean Rayner and Declan Deere, who are on their way to taking second place in the D3 class after a difficult rally. While taking Class D3, finishing 5th in the category and impressing the locals were Chris Shooter and Bev Good, who had one of their best rally results after a superb weekend. Adrian Commode and Maurice Beckett finished 4th overall and 2nd in D4. While the battle for 2nd finally swung the way of the Squires brothers when a couple of really good times enabled them to sneak ahead of Woodman and Sayer on stage 11 and hold on to that position over the final few stages. After a superb 2-day battle, this was the Squires' first ever Class D5 victory. But the overall winners of Category 3 were Guy Anderson and Kim Baker. This had been a fantastic performance for a brand new car, and it was a real pleasure to see something other than an Escort take Category 3 honours.
We just stuck at it today, and for whatever reason the result came. You know, we just plugged away and it worked. So
excellent. And so how did you enjoy the weekend?
Oh, absolutely brilliant. You know, the boys have been great. Kim's been great. The event itself has been really, really good. Belgian rallying, they always welcome you. Yeah, you know, a good weekend. A lot of fun had by all.
This coverage of the British Historic Rally Championship is brought to you by Autosessif.com, Skipton Ford, the Tuthill Porsche Challenge, Sherwood Engines, XS Racing and West Wales Rally Spares.